when it comes to adapting a work, there's a lot of factors that go into it, and sometimes they can turn out great. One factor is that the story just isn't over yet, and sometimes that can end up with something that's really great, like Full Metal Alchemist, something really good, like Trigun, or you get Game of Thrones, which I don't need to go into. But sometimes works get readapted after their stories are told completely. Things like, well, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is an improvement upon the original and fills in a lot of the gaps that people saw and gives it an ending that's probably more satisfactory to me. But sometimes you get what we're about to see with Trigun. And honestly, I want to die. Now, coming clean, I am a massive fan of Trigun. I actually really enjoy the series. I think Nightowl is a genius. I find his original manga to be a masterpiece. Probably my favorite manga and anime series together that I have ever experienced. Huge fan of Trigun. Having said that, Stampede looks to be a train wreck. And I don't mean that to say I want it to fail. Obviously not. I want more Trigun. Ever. I really want it to have its own Brotherhood treatment. And this is not what I want. A prequel series that doesn't feel like a prequel because it doesn't look like it's taking place right after the events where they crash land on Gunsmoke, in between him and Knives splitting. This feels like it happens either after the events of July or leading up to the events of July, which I'm not entirely sure that we need. I feel like if you're going to do a prequel series, you do it in 15 years before he and Knives split up, rather than after that. It just doesn't feel quite right to me, and I feel like the time would have been better spent finishing the adaptation of the manga, rather than, starting over and starting off from somewhere that we don't even really know about. I think that would have been better use of the time, because Trigun only got 30% adapted off in the beginning. Majority of the story was being written after the anime was finished, airing in Japan. So I don't quite see the utility for this. We're not just speaking about its utility, right, or the reasoning for it. It's a lot of technical issues I have with the show. The animation is going to be 3D CGI based, which can work. I'm not going to say it's all the way terrible. And Studio Orange is a studio that is very well reputable with doing this kind of stuff, and it can look amazing. I think CGI animation is better used for background and enhancing visuals rather than being the basis for it. I think a lot of what Studio 4C used to do, especially with Spriggan and some other more modern works, I think the way Studio 4C handles it is fine. But I don't think it's necessary for Trigun to be a CGI show. I think it works well with that older, more authentic 2D style. I would prefer it hand-drawn over anything else. It's just not realistic. I think it's a very very interesting property. There's something great about just how gritty it looks, despite not being gritty. It takes place in a giant space desert. Vash being more rough around the edges looking, despite his sort of hot and cold personality, where sometimes he's this goofball who just jokes around and becomes a super serious assassin-like character when he needs to, is sort of what makes Vash great. And I feel like this CGI that makes him look kind of like a twink just doesn't work. I think the alterations to his look, the missing of his MJ hoops, the changing of his glasses, the changing of his hair, which did not need to happen. I feel like are things that we just did not need from this series. I think if you really wanted to do this series justice, you would just, it doesn't have to look exactly the same. And that's what the team who was going to adapt it said. They didn't want to, just trace over the manga and look exactly like, the original did. I want to do something different. And that's fine. You could have done it digital. You could have, hand-drawn it out and give it this own unique look that doesn't look entirely like the original. That's fine. It's just, I think it's better as a 2D hand-drawn or digitally drawn work than just make it all CGI. So I think you're going to get a lot of problems that you see with a lot of other 3D CGI shows. And while I know people love Beastars, I just did not love the look of it. I feel like it was too jarring. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of the source material, I just find the animation just not be for me. I'll probably watch Trigun anyway because I love the work so much. I just can't focus. Can't stop focusing on how jarring it's gonna look. It's just the way I am. But to get aside that, there's more issues. We've only seen one trailer, so we don't exactly know what the story is going to entail yet. And this is a lot of sort of like my opinions before it airs, sort of thing. But I'm just looking at how they massacred my boy as a child. That haircut is an abomination, man. Why did Rem do this to my poor guy? It was so unnecessary. I feel like, him and Knives are gonna look different, which is fine, I guess. It's just not gonna look accurate to what they used to look like. Remember when Rem Severin, you see them leave, the spaceship and fall on Gunsmoke, their hair is what it is in the show. Knives and Vash used to look like shorter versions of their current selves by the end of the show, right? So I don't know what to do with that, honestly. I know they're not trying to copy the old show, but the look of Vash is just so iconic. His red trench coat, his glasses, his hair, everything about him just screams uniqueness. He looks, unique. He looks like a great character because he's different. He's this tall, brooding looking sort of character, but in actuality, he's a sweetheart for the most case. So I don't know. I just don't feel right about the way it looks. It feels odd to me. It feels alien. And it's just fine. And this is obviously something that Orange wants to do. And they can do it. If they pull it off, I will be the happier for it. I just don't think they're going to get there. I think there's a lot of hurdles to doing this. For one, I think you're going to have a hard time to push fans on this. Because fans just don't like seeing their shows get the CGI treatment. They just don't. And while, I think people could learn to love it, the initial pushbacks would be great. I'm having a more mediated take on it, but I know there's going to be a lot of fans of the original series or the manga who just are not going to like how it looks, are just going to write it off simply because Vash looks different. He doesn't look like the Vash they remember on the Toonami block. He looks he looks younger, just fine, but the plants age incredibly fast. Vash and Knives are a year old when they crash land on Gunsmoke. They're already, 8, 9, 10, they're approaching their, late childhood years. There's just this disconnect. By the time they're 3 years old, they should look like they do, at the end of the series, because they don't age beyond that point. Because that's just not how plants work. So it just feels wrong. I do hope that they adapt the Rem Severin sort of episode correctly, kind of give the real reason as to why, Knives has his sort of heel turn moment where he goes from, inquisitive child to mass murderer. I think that'd be great. I think there's a lot of good space to get into if you're going to go on a prequel. I just think it's less useful than fully adapting the show. Now, the show goes out and starts from this, midpoint between, Rem Severin in July, or the start of the show or whatever, and goes all the way through, and that fully adapts it. We get to see the rest of the Gung-Ho guns, and see Vash's interaction with them, and all that. I could be fine with that. But I just don't know if we're going to get that. I'm not sure if that's, the path they want to take. It'd be great if they did, If they do that, more power to them. My main critique of the show is how it's going to look. How it already looks. It's utility. If they can do, the high-flying action, they can give me some good gunfights while still preserving the comedy of the show, I'd love it. And that's really my final point is what is this show going to be? From the trailer, it looks to be uber serious. There's not a lot of levity in the trailer, which, if you're watching or reading Trigun, it's a lot of moments of levity. Every episode in the anime starts out, for the most part, with, fun, happy times, jokes. Vash doing, cartoonish actions. When the first episode, when the bar gets shot up, and he's just, ducking everything, walking like a crab, running away from the boomerang guy. There's a lot of levity to this series. There's a lot of fun, a lot of happiness. A lot of Vash making the most of everything, trying to keep Millie and the girl, to keep the girls happy. Try to ruminate what Wolfwood is going through, trying to make the people in these towns feel better, and make their lives better, rather than just trying to be the, murderer he's assumed to be. So like, I think that's gonna be lost. I feel like if you're going to, do this, you got to do it right. You can change the visuals and the starting point, but the core feeling or substance of the show needs to remain similar, right? Like Vash still needs to be a goofball who can kill you, but doesn't. So that's his entire role in the show. He's a goofball who has the skills to just chill everybody around, but he doesn't because he's got a heart of gold thanks to what Ram put on him. So I don't know. I'm cautious, to say the least. I don't want to write the show off because I love the source material so much, but at the same time, I'm not ready to accept it for what it is. I feel like I need to see more. And granted, we're really into the process of this show. Like, I'm not sure how much has even been worked on. Not entirely sure, like, their whole scope of what this show is going to be. We only have the trailer and, like, some concept art to deal with. But I just feel very, very hesitant to enjoy or write off this show. I feel like we need more time for it to develop. Get more trailers, get some more art, get some more, talking from the people behind it. And maybe I can, formulate a more complete opinion. But it's more just hesitancy and initial pushback by the way they've already, gone about their adaptation. But who knows? It probably could be good. But I'm not betting on it.